How many points has Ferrari actually lost this year? Yes, we are deep diving into the Ferrari masterclass on how to throw away a championship by the middle of the season. This may well be difficult viewing for Ferrari fans, so God knows why I'm making this video. And it's also worth mentioning, this is a bit of fun. Of course, there's lots of what ifs and blah blah blah, but I really want to take a deeper dive into how many points roughly Ferrari have potentially lost this year through driver error, strategy blunders, and reliability problems. You may not agree exactly with the points they lost, but that's fine. You're allowed your opinion. A 97-point gap now stands between Ferrari and Red Bull in the constructors' standings, and an 80-point mountain separates Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. I have tears rolling down my face when I read this out loud. Let's take a look into how many points Ferrari have potentially flushed down the toilet, and yes, I am aware that Red Bull also have had their problems, especially with reliability, but they haven't made nearly as many mistakes. Bahrain, 0 points lost. Easy 1-2 finish, no points lost. Even got the fastest lap, the perfect start for Ferrari. Saudi Arabia, 0 points lost. Despite a valiant effort from Leclerc to capture Ferrari's first back-to-back win since 2019, Max Verstappen and Red Bull were just too quick on the day and took home 25 points. However, Ferrari did nothing wrong. They were simply outpaced. No points lost here. Australia, 10 points lost. On one side of the garage, you had Charles Leclerc pretty dominant and secured a big old 26 points once again. It was looking all too easy for the Monegasque at this stage of the season, wasn't it? However, Carlos Sainz had a much trickier weekend. He firstly got screwed over by a red flag in qualifying, which meant he started 9th on the grid, and then entered an F1 slip and slide on lap 1, beaching his Ferrari in a gravel trap and walking away with 0 points from the weekend. Driver error, but still something we're accounting for and adding to the Ferrari lost points table. You have to say, in a minimum worst case scenario, Sainz would have finished 5th and collected 10 points. Imola, 19 points lost. One of Ferrari's home Grand Prix, what could possibly go wrong? Quite a lot, it turns out. Although Verstappen was the quickest man on track over the entire weekend, lots of points were still up for grabs, especially with a sprint race on the cards. Sainz made life a little bit harder for himself, crashing during qualifying and forcing himself to start 10th for Saturday's sprint race. However, all credit to him, he did manage to recover to 4th, and along with Leclerc's P2 finish, Ferrari walked away with a respectable 12 points from the season's first sprint race. But that wasn't the problem. During Sunday's race, Sainz collided with Daniel Ricciardo and DNF'd for the second race in a row. At a minimum, if Sainz had stayed 4th the entire race, he would have collected 12 points. Yeah, I know, ifs and buts, but this is the whole video, okay? As if Sainz being out the race wasn't enough of a hit, Leclerc then spun his Ferrari in pursuit of Sergio Perez. He was pretty fortunate to be able to continue after hitting the wall and eventually finished P6, but even if he hadn't managed to get past the Red Bull for second, a podium place still would have got him an extra 7 points. Miami, 0 points lost. In Miami, Verstappen was simply the faster driver, forcing Leclerc and Sainz down to P2 and P3, despite locking out the front row of the grid in qualifying. Didn't lose any points though, just outpaced. Spain, 25 points lost. It was Spain without the S for Ferrari on this particular weekend, as a clearly dominant performance was shafted by a failed power unit. Leclerc and his Ferrari put on a brilliant show in qualifying, beating Verstappen by almost 3/10 on his way to pole position. The pace continued during the race as well, as Leclerc pulled out a commanding lead on the rest of the field early on, before his Ferrari power unit decided to take an early summer vacation, retiring him from the race and costing him an easy 25 points. Life wasn't much better in the other Ferrari as Sainz started 3rd but took a quick detour on lap 7, spinning all the way back to 11th. He did manage to recover to 4th, and that was probably where he would have finished anyway, even without the mistake. Monaco, 10 points lost. It hurts to return to the horror show that was Monaco, but we'll power through. Locking out the front row on a track that is almost impossible to overtake is a pretty surefire way to take home the maximum amount of points available during an F1 weekend. But this is Ferrari we're talking about. In all fairness, a quickly drying track made it difficult for the strategists to make a decision on what tyre would be the quickest, but Ferrari went into full-on panic mode. A failed double-stack pit stop on lap 21 cost Leclerc loads of time, forcing him and Carlos Sainz out of the lead, while Sergio Perez waltzed through to pick up his first victory of the season. With Sainz finishing second and Leclerc fourth, Ferrari walked away with just 30 points from the weekend. Although Perez was one of the fastest drivers throughout the weekend, this should have been a simple Ferrari victory. Without the strategy blunder, Leclerc would have won his home race, while Sainz would have been able to keep Verstappen behind and claim third. The double podium would have given Ferrari an additional 10 points. Azerbaijan, 37 points lost. Ferrari hit pretty much rock bottom when we went to Baku. A hydraulic failure for Sainz and an engine failure for Leclerc meant Ferrari walked away from Azerbaijan with absolutely nothing. Leclerc was absolutely fighting for victory come Sunday in Azerbaijan. He took pole position by almost 3/10 over Sergio Perez, and if his engine had decided to not take another sabbatical and Sainz had also not run into any issues, at a minimum, Ferrari could have probably collected 37 points, with Leclerc finishing P1 and Sainz in P4. Now this isn't a full-blown guarantee, I know, as Leclerc was on a different strategy, but I back him to have taken a close-fought victory. Fanboy intensifies. It's absolutely fine if you disagree with me. Honest. Canada, 0 points lost. After a weekend to forget in Azerbaijan, Ferrari decided to play it on the safe side with Leclerc, taking all new engine parts that demoted him to the back of the grid. In a pretty similar fashion to Miami, Verstappen was simply the better driver over the course of the weekend, and Ferrari got every point they could get their hands on. Sainz passed Alonso for P2, and Leclerc recovered to P5. Now, I'm not going to deploy what-ifs to engine penalties, as that's probably taking it a little too far with this little prediction game. Great Britain, 6 points lost. Sainz took his first pole and first race win in F1 at the British Grand Prix, but Leclerc was once again a victim of poor Ferrari strategy. After Esteban Ocon caused a safety car with just 13 laps to go, still have no idea why he stopped the Alpine on track, Ferrari decided to pit only one of their cars for fresh softs. But it wasn't the race leader Charles Leclerc, it was Carlos Sainz, leaving Charles on old and slow hard tyres. The mind-boggling decision meant that Leclerc was pretty much a sitting duck for the cars behind, while Sainz was able to drive off into the sunset. To be fair, it did produce a brilliant bit of wheel-to-wheel action, but it cost Ferrari a pretty much guaranteed 1-2 finish, with Verstappen struggling with a damaged Red Bull. Ferrari did collect 37 points from their weekend at Silverstone, with Sainz finishing in P1 and Leclerc in P4, but a 1-2 finish would have gotten them 6 more points that they sorely needed. Austria, 18 points lost. Up until lap 57 on Sunday, Austria was turning out to be a pretty damn good weekend for Ferrari. P2 and P3 in the sprint got them another 13 points, and even better, Sunday race pace meant that Ferrari might have actually collected their second 1-2 finish of the season. Keyword being might. That dream was quickly destroyed when Sainz's Ferrari engine exploded, forcing him to pull over and watch his podium finish burn to the ground. So without Sainz's engine failure, a Ferrari 1-2 was definitely on the cards and would have got the team another 18 points. France, 29 points lost. This one, at least on Leclerc's side of the garage, cannot be blamed on Ferrari as a team, but on the driver. Charles Leclerc crashed out of the lead and threw away what was looking to be a close-fought 25 points, and on the other side of the garage, the Ferrari strategy team felt it was their time to shine and unleashed their very worst strategy calls onto Carlos Sainz. They made him switch tyres with just 10 laps to go. The head-scratching strategy demoted Sainz from P3 down to P5, meaning the team only ended up with 11 points from the weekend. Without the decision to pit and even with a 5-second time penalty for an unsafe release, many people believed that Sainz could have held on to that podium place and gotten his team another 4 points. Hungary, 17 points lost. Ferrari's strategy team took centre stage once again in Hungary, with another weird and wacky approach that wasn't even recommended by Pirelli. Other than an out-of-nowhere pole position from George Russell, Ferrari looked dominant in the hands of Leclerc, until their pit wall stuck Charles on hard tyres, despite a few teams and drivers finding no pace at all on the white-walled Pirellis. The mistake meant Leclerc tumbled out of the lead and all the way down to 6th, having to make an extra pit stop to get him off the hard tyres and onto the softs. At a minimum, with the correct strategy and very quick cars, Ferrari should have clawed back at least 17 more points in the hands of Leclerc, with Charles finishing P1 with the right strategy to extend the medium tyre stints. All in all, Ferrari's wacky strategy fumbles, exploding engines, and driver errors have cost them 171 points so far this season. And that's not even counting the fastest lap opportunities that they've missed out on. Breaking that down, Ferrari has lost 37 points to strategy, 80 points to car failures, and 54 points to driver error. How it's split between the two drivers, I hear you ask? Well, Sainz has lost 46 points in total, and Leclerc 125. Just a solid 5 race wins then. Pain. There you have it, a fun look, and not to be taken too seriously, into how many points Ferrari have lost this season. How many more do you think they'll lose in the second half? Let us know in the comment section below.